Welcome to Getcha Rocks Off with Mick Wall, the world's leading rock and metal writer. Each fortnight, Mick will unpack rock and roll stories. Stories that you probably won't find in print. So pour yourself a Jack and Coke and get ready to get your rocks off.
Check me now, I'm turned on.
Ooh, he's turned on. He's turned on. Did you hear about Stephanie Seymour?
Yeah, her son died.
Yeah, of a accidental drugs overdose.
Yeah.
You kind of don't always need the word accidental because they're all pretty much accidental. If they weren't accidental, you'd say he committed suicide.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Right, keep talking.
Okay, well, yeah, it was very.
Do what you
if
meant.
You knew, you'd do something about it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, John, I this isn't for public consumption, obviously, but I really wish, you know, you hadn't fucked up the end of the grunge episode.
You mean when the plug was pulled? Just when we were getting to the good bit.
Yes, but the thing is, I don't think anybody noticed really. Those
just abruptly. Well, no, it did make a kind of sound. It made a sound.
Did it? I actually didn't get that far. What happened?
Well, there was a kind of electronic pulse, you might call it.
Really?
Yeah, that sounded like a phone call or something, and then it just cut out.
Which reminds me, phone's off, my friend.
Well, I need the phone on because I was going to read out the tweets.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, right. Hang on. Let me turn mine off then, because mine was the culprit. What happened, Fight fans, is that we use a laptop, my own state-of-the-art circa 2019 laptop, and it hooks to my phone if I've got Wi-Fi on the phone. And I got a phone call, and trying not to disrupt us, I didn't make a deal of it. I just tried to stop it. You know, when you hang up, you tell them to, you stop. And I think whatever I did, because it was Damien, my accountant, who was ringing. And your former
for Christ's
accountant.
Sake, pick up. That's what he was saying.
They're coming, run!
They're coming now.
Now.
It's like that bit in Breaking Bad. They're coming now.
And because he said to me a couple of days later, he goes, I'm ever so sorry. I hope I didn't. He goes, somehow I seem to end up on your podcast with John. I said, what are you talking about? He goes, I rang you, and the next thing I could hear you guys talking.
See, human error, as we've explained before.
Human error
from Damien the accountant.
Yeah. So, in fairness, it was Damien's fault.
It was Damien's. Well, we've identified that one. Excellent.
Yeah. But do you know what? It was a shame because, like, someone else tweeted and said...
they said, I can tell you what they said. Paul T, he said, Get Your Pod just ended abruptly when a phone rang. Was it Axel's lawyers calling? I think it was probably Eddie Vedder's lawyers calling, judging by what came next.
Well, this is
sometimes God just says you shouldn't hear that bit.
Well, Eddie is the son of God.
Yeah, that's
as
right.
we know, the grunge God.
Yeah,
the miserable grunge God who's responsible for all the ills in the world. But and then someone else said, you didn't mention Alice in Chains. And, of course, we did do a whole bit on them, didn't we?
That's right. Oh, we did.
One of the best bits we've ever done. Such a shame.
Good. Such a shame that Damien rang.
Yeah. You see, if Damien hadn't rung, you know, all would have been well. But
and is Damien the same person that negotiates the terms of this podcast?
So we won't go there. But what I was going to say was someone else, Alice in Chains, and it made me realise, because I always forget what we've said almost as we're saying it, you know. It reminded me that there was a great ending to that episode. We usually have fairly dribbly kind of endings, but that was a really anthemic ending. Just a shame they missed it.
It was, yeah. I mean, they'll just never know what it was.
Now, I'll tell you what it was, because it was really good, was we were pointing out that the grunge...
It's never going to be that good now.
No, but I just think it's worth mentioning that what we were saying was that Eddie Vedder was always so jealous of the tragic grunge stars, and that if he hadn't been so derided by Kurt Cobain really early on, Pearl Jam might have had a whole different outlook. There'd have been none of this
They
ticket
might have been
master.
they might have been the Foo Fighters.
Exactly.
Just like they just turn up.
Fun.
Fun at your local Wembley Stadium. Come down and have a good time.
You'd be going, hey, here's Eddie. He's great.
Listen to the hits, all the hits he's got that we like singing along to.
And that big smile and beard.
And he's a real nice guy, and his mum's backstage and everything.
Oh, it's great. But instead it's, fucking hell,
God,
comes
it's
that
Eddie,
miserable
it comes
cunt again.
fucking Eddie Vedder again.
Fuck's
And I did recall the story told by a certain photographer friend of ours.
Oh, yes.
Of Eddie, as you remember, in the days after the great success of 10, which affected him so badly.
Yeah.
So,
It's the worst thing that ever happened
He
to
had
him.
all this money and fame, and it was horrible.
horrible.
It was just horrible.
Yeah, avoid that if you
People
can.
being nice to him and treating him well. He
And
didn't-
giving him millions of dollars.
He didn't like
Where's
it.
that at?
He didn't like it. So what he did was he wore the same T-shirt every day for years on end. It was a little sort of brown T-shirt.
Well, it started out as a white.
It was a white T-shirt, but it
t-shirt.
became brown over and every photo session, Eddie Vedder was in the brown T-shirt. So he went to do a photo session with the photographer chum of ours.
Yes.
Who's
An
wide,
associate.
an associate, who's widely known for his great love of rock star foibles.
And a great humanitarian, as
in
I
his
think.
own right. In his own right.
Yes.
And he obviously was rejoicing in Eddie's success. He was delighted by how well he'd done and how easy it was to get access to him these days.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so Eddie turned up at the studio, and it transpired that Eddie, in fact, it wasn't just the one T-shirt. He had at least, this was the story. He had at least 24 of exactly the same T-shirt.
Really? I didn't
which
know
was
that.
a designer T-shirt, which he would just put on, and it would look like. But it was, I've got the same T-shirt on because I'm Eddie Vedder. But it wasn't the same T-shirt.
No.
That's the truth of grunge, people.
But you see, karma, instant karma, well, not so instant, but fairly quick karma, bit him in the ass.
Yeah, of course it did.
Because he couldn't be Kurt, and it really fucked him up.
Yeah.
He couldn't even be Chris Cornell, it fucked him up. But at the end of the day, the final irony is that Scott Weiland, dead.
Yeah.
Kurt Cobain,
Dead.
dead. Chris Cornell, dead.
Sadly, yeah.
Lane Staley,
Long dead.
dead. Eddie Vedder, I'm still alive.
Oh,
I'm still alive.
Oh. Well done, Eddie. Good work.
So that's what you missed.
So, us discussing Eddie Vedder.
Yeah, there's probably about another 25
Do you know
minutes.
the last time I heard of Eddie Vedder, I remember this on the way home. Was sent an album called something like Ukulele Songs. And it was Eddie Vedder.
The long-awaited.
Eddie Vedder by a river, with his ukulele. Sing, I don't know.
Ooh, I'm sad.
When I'm cleaning windows. Anyway, we're not talking about that today.
Every day I go to Seattle carrying my
How long-
ukulele. I see Courtney Love, I say, when I'm cleaning windows. In fact, it's a little known fact that
Ukulele Songs.
Eddie, as George Formby, was the first to spot Kurt's body as he was cleaning his windows.
That so should have happened.
Well, it did.
Is that police? You never believe what I've just seen.
As I was cleaning windows. Well, his original name.
Someone write this down. It's good.
What's little known about George Foreman actually is
George
that
Formby.
he was.
George Foreman.
Oh, what did I say? Foreman.
Foreman's the boxer.
Oh well, that's what I meant.
You went, okay. Gone on to George.
Well,
Foreman.
George Foreman was the great uncle of George
Formby.
Formby.
Yeah.
And in fact, George Formby, George wasn't his real name. He was christened Grunge Formby because his parents were illiterate. They didn't have to write George.
They wrote grunge by mistake.
So for the first 25 years of his life, he was known as Grunge Formby.
Yeah.
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 So there you go.
It all
You
comes
learn
together.
something.
Seamless.
Seamless. Right. So today's topic Oh, actually, before we get on to today's topic, do we have a few? Yeah, I've got
Corrections and clarifications.
yes.
Well, there was the one about what happened at the end of that episode. It was a big question. There was. We did see. I don't know if I've got that one to hand, but we did see, or I did see, some of the famous Kiss New Year show.
I watched the whole thing.
Yeah. Or I watched the whole thing on YouTube, which was one song. I think they only put one song on YouTube, which was made for loving you, baby. You were made for loving me. Bang!
That's my tongue out there.
Yeah, that's his tongue. And then with the $1 million of pyro. And someone sent me the most brilliant tweet, which said, I was watching it online. And when you watched it live, the amount of people that were watching rolls up as a number at the side of the screen, which I have seen, you know.
Oh, right.
It always says, like, you know, X amount of people are currently watching. And this guy who tweeted, thank you for it, he said at the highest point, there were, I think he said 400,000 people watching.
I thought you were going to say 400.
No, it was more than 400. Maybe it wasn't 400,000. But anyway, no. What he calculated, I got it completely wrong. What he calculated
Surely
was
not.
the maximum amount of money, the number the people watching could have generated from the price of pay-per-view was $400,000. That's what it said, something like that. I could have got that slightly wrong. But anyway, the cost of the pyro was $1 million.
Yeah, but you see, what you're not factoring in, okay, is the amount of money they would have made from
T-shirts.
not T-shirts. Have you heard of Kiss? I mean, there isn't a product in the world that doesn't have a tongue sticking out.
There was no one at the gig. That was why there was no one there. There's COVID. There's no one at the gig except for Kiss.
What?
Yeah.
No.
You might have heard about.
No,
it.
God bless you. No. There will have been commemorative stuff.
The people at the gig, there was Kiss, and there was a massive hotel next to them, and fireworks. That was what was happening. That was what I saw on I Was Made for Loving You, and the vocals were fantastic.
I've got three words for you.
I'm not sure the vocals were recorded on the day, but they.
I got 3 words for you. Don't diss Kiss.
I'm not dissing them. It looked. I'm not. It looked amazing. It really did look great.
You saying about I Was Made for Loving You under the corrections and whatever clarifications. Apparently, I'm pretty sure it was you. When we did the Kiss episode and we talked about I Was Made for Loving You, there was some suggestion. I think it was from you. That they had already taken the makeup off when they made that record.
No, that can't be right. It was when they were with Casablanca, wasn't it?
Well, what I'm saying is it wasn't right. they still had the makeup on at that point. Yeah. But one of us allegedly suggested in a loose,
I don't
free form kind of manner.
We're very happy to correct that.
We are.
We are.
In fact, we're both sitting here right now in our Kiss makeup. Which one are you, John? It's hard to tell.
Well, I'm Vinnie Vincent.
But which one? What was he?
Vinnie Vincent was the Ankh.
What?
The Ankh. You know the ancient Egyptian symbol, the Ankh. It's like an inverted cross, but it has a kind of.
You're making this up now. You're just making this up.
Google A-N. I think it's
Wank.
A-N-H-K. Ankh.
Not W-A-N-K.
So he had an anchor tattooed on his arm with a W over it that Gene did while he was asleep.
Well, if you're going to be Vinnie Vincent, I think it's only fair to describe my own costume today as vintage Ace Frehley.
Yeah, the Space Ace.
The Space Ace.
Yeah.
The Space Ace who slept on his face. In any place there was a floor.
Yeah. I don't think Ace was in Dubai. I'm not sure. Is he in Kiss at the moment? I only looked at Gene and Paul.
No, he's not in Kiss.
I don't know. Oh, come on,
case.
they did reform with them all together or something.
No, they got a much better
kicked out again.
The thing about Ace was he's amazing, but he's not
it was
a good
Bruce
guitar
Kulick
player.
again. It was still Bruce Kulick, I think.
No,
is it not?
For the love of God, it's definitely not Bruce Kulick. I'm gonna leave that one open.
Let's
for
leave
the
it.
kids
If you want to tweet in, please do, and tell us who the current guitarist is.
I can't believe you
Well,
don't know.
maybe
You're just kidding.
Maybe you could put in a call to their management and ask them.
Well, I don't think I need to, John, because I know who Zinc is.
Yeah, okay.
You know,
And who's the
everybody,
drummer at the moment?
everybody knows who the drummer is, but look, we can't spend all day.
Who were the other people singing that I heard on the tape?
No, you see, we can't spend all day on the past.
No.
Actually, we are going to spend all day on the past, but in a different area of the past, okay? So, to today's subject matter, which is, I don't know what, I haven't got a catchy title for this.
No.
What is today's subject
Well,
matter?
you came up with a really good idea of talking about bands
I did, yeah.
who replaced their singers.
Yes.
So it's bands that have replaced their singers, which sound
Boring.
It sounds boring, but the starting point was us laughing about the people who've been in Black Sabbath post Ronnie James Dio.
Now, here's a competition for you kids.
In order.
Because it's only kids that listen to this.
Yeah,
You know, we're
yeah.
very big with
Yeah.
kids,
Yeah.
you know. Can you name all the singers ever?
Ever. I don't think.
I'll give you.
I'll tell you someone who probably can't. Tony Iommi.
Well, Tony's the only one who's ever been in the thing
The whole time.
all the way through.
Yeah.
But there was a very long period where he appeared to be more like a man clutching a life raft
Yeah.
than actually I'm the original member.
So we're going to kick this off by trying to go through every Black Sabbath singer.
I'll start you off
Yeah.
with
Well,
an easy one.
Well,
Who was the first
yeah,
singer?
well, so obviously we know Ozzy, who I saw on the telly. I think he had a program on BBC Two the other night, recapping his career. With
Indeed.
him and
Indeed.
Sharon.
And who was the second singer?
Well, the second singer. Now this was I'd forgotten his name, but you put me straight on this. He was in Savoy Brown,
He was.
and he kind of I think Ozzy had. It was probably around Never Say Die when Ozzy did end up leaving. He was briefly kicked out and then came back in.
I think it was actually a bit earlier
Maybe
than that.
okay, yeah.
I think it was around the Sabotage, that sort of
Okay,
era.
yeah.
Because they had after Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, they hit this moment where they discovered inadvertently that their existing management had somehow
Yeah.
human error.
They had by their own admission rented a house in LA to record an album, which essentially just involved taking cocaine for
Yes,
24 hours a day. To the
But
point
for
where,
several
to the point where
days
on
in a
Vol,
row.
to the point where on Vol 4, which is the greatest cocaine album of all time, on Vol 4 it says thanks to the great Coca-Cola Company of Los Angeles.
and is that the album with Snowblind?
That is the
on
album
it?
with Snowblind on.
Funnily enough, which later became the title of a book about cocaine smuggling and a film about cocaine smuggling. Who'd have thought?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I can't remember that geezer's name.
Savoy Brown, Dave something?
Yeah, Dave Walker.
Dave Walker, was it?
Yeah.
That doesn't sound right. Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe it's right.
But he was
Tremendous singer.
a good singer
Tremendous
actually.
singer.
But he didn't last long. He didn't.
Well, he didn't do anything. It's like when Tony Iommi joined Jethro Tull. He was in it, but he never did anything, and then he went back.
So are we saying that perhaps Ian Anderson was the second singer?
No, I don't think we're saying that. I think Tony very much joined Ian, rather than Ian joining Tony.
He did. That's a story for another day.
Yeah.
But okay, so there's Dave Walker. Then Ozzy's back.
Ozzy's
Dave Walker didn't record. Did he? I don't know if he did any shows. I think he was just
might.
rehearsing.
I think they rehearsed, and they might have done a photo shoot.
Yeah.
But that
would
was as
figure.
far as it went.
To make the announcement.
Make the announcement. Yeah.
Our new singer.
Yeah.
And then a week later.
Will you welcome?
And then they're like, "Will you welcome back?"
Yeah.
And that kind of set the tone
Yeah.
for how they would going forward, as we say, how they would manage the situation of singers. So after Ozzy came, of course, Ronnie James Dio. After Ronnie, and this is where it starts to get hilarious.
Yeah,
After Ronnie James Dio, there was.
And let's first of all, Ronnie leaves, and the story behind Ronnie leaving that they tell everyone is that they're making a live album. Now the classic, Live Evil, and if you work it out right, evil is live spelled backwards.
Or if you think about
Lives,
it, live is evil
spelled forwards.
backwards.
whatever. But it's the classic situation where I think back in the day, someone explained this to me once in terms of Rush, because you would sign a record deal and you'd sometimes sign for 3 albums or 4 albums, maybe. It was the classic deal. But you do 2 studio albums, and then to get that deal out the way and sign your next deal, which will be for more money, you do a live album,
Double.
a contractual live. And if it was a double, it counted as 2 albums, presumably, which is why there used to be so many live double albums, apart from the fact they were great and the fans loved them. So Sabbath, amazingly enough, are doing this live double album.
Interesting you should say that, because just as Sabbath, and we will return to this, just as Sabbath were doing their live double album for contractual reasons, Ozzy was also doing his live double album
for contractual
reasons. And but why Ozzy's was more hilarious, apart from the fact everything about Ozzy is more hilarious than Black Sabbath, is that it was the dispute between Sharon Osbourne, she married him that year, and her father Don Arden.
Yeah.
Don had managed Sabbath, and then when when Ozzy split, he did not like the idea of Ronnie Dio replacing him. His idea was that Ronnie Dio should write in the studio with Iommi, but Ozzy should tour. These days, that would probably work, but back then it was ridiculous, you know. So Ozzy does his first 2 solo albums, just as you described, both huge hits. But in the meantime, Don has formed his own label, Jet, and wants to have Ozzy on his label and manage him and do all these other things.
And he didn't consider that unreasonable.
Or any kind of conflict of interest.
After all I've done for you.
These days you call it 360 management.
Yeah.
Back then you called it, look, here is my gun up your hooter.
Yeah.
Sign here.
Mate. Yeah.
So Sharon, who her brother David, Sharon Don's daughter, who her brother David memorably described as Don in a skirt, thought, here's a jolly wheeze. We'll get out of our contract with my father by doing a double album. Don went along with it because, you know, the first 2 Ozzy albums were mega multi-platinum hits in America. And he's like, this is going to be great. But she deliberately didn't, at that show at the Ritz in New York, they didn't play any of Ozzy's solo songs. They just did
that's right. It was
Ozzy,
just Black Sabbath, wasn't
as
it?
Ozzy memorably put it, a load of old Sabbath shit. Of course, some great Sabbath songs, of course, but Speak of the Devil, or Talk of the Devil, it was different.
It was called different. I never worked that out. I think the Americans wouldn't understand it if it was
Speak.
They say Talk of the Devil, and we say Speak of the Devil.
They would never have understood.
No.
They'd have gone, Speak of the Devil. Oh, I'm not buying that.
It's Talk. I'd buy it if it was called Talk of the Devil.
Yeah. See, if it was... They've got a new one out and it's called Talk. I'm buying that.
I'm getting that one. It's like Use Your Illusion 1 and 2. What one are you going to get?
Yes. So, and Ronnie James Dio, the other thing we should mention quickly was, because this is still, it becomes less valid as this story goes on, but right now, Ronnie James Dio essentially rescues Black Sabbath. Him and Iommi write all these great songs together. Bill Ward has already gone off in a heroin sulk. He does come back because there was quite a lot of money inducing him to.
Well, Vinny Appice came in, didn't he? And played.
No, John. What happened was when they first got together, Bill Ward didn't want any part of it because Ozzy was his true love. Geezer had some personal issues, and don't forget he'd been the lyricist. So Ronnie James Dio and Tony Iommi wrote all these songs, again in another way that kind of foretold the future. It was going to be an Iommi solo album.
Right.
Suddenly it's a Black Sabbath album. Suddenly, let's get Bill back. Let's get Tony back. Because in those days, credibility counted for more than now.
Yeah. Because Bill's on Heaven and Hell, isn't he?
Exactly. And their biggest hit since the heyday of Ozzy 5 years before, and also for your generation, really, John, tend to regard the Dio as the definitive.
Well, the first gig I ever saw, first heavy metal gig I ever saw was Sabbath on the Heaven and Hell tour, 1981. at the Harrison Odeon.
1980.
No, they came back. They did. That,
Oh, they
was-
did.
it
That
a
was
two-
February
Yeah,
81.
it was a sort of two-legged tour.
You're
yeah.
right. You're
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
You're right. I know because I was the PR on that
Oh,
tour.
well, there you go. We didn't know. I was a mere ticket buyer.
Oh, you see. And when Ronnie left, was fired, whatever you want to, mutually assured destruction. It was a real blow. I mean, not for Ronnie. He went on to even bigger and better
Yeah.
things.
But the story was when they were making the double live evil that Ronnie was working during the day because he's a daylight hours type guy.
Yeah. He wasn't a cocaine monster.
No,
Is that what we're saying?
You like to go home at night, have dinner, and watch the baseball or whatever, like normal people do. Whereas Tony and the others were working at night, and their claim was that Ronnie during the day Ronnie was turning the vocals up, and then at night they'd go and turn them back down again. I think on the finished album was obviously the turned down version because this is like this, in the background you hear this little in the misty morning. Tiny little. He's like it's heaven and hell. Worlds full of kings and queens. That's what Live Evil sounds like. His other great complaint about that album was that he's credited as just Ronnie Dio.
Yeah, that was piss take.
Yeah. Whereas is his professional name,
Ronnie James Dio.
Ronnie James Dio, featuring
Ronnie James
Dio.
Dio. That glory would come later.
That will come later. Well, he then thought, "Fuck this! I'm forming a band. It's going to be called Dio." There's no misinterpreting that.
No. And of course
So Ronnie's gone. Ronnie's
gone. And who do they bring in?
But the other thing we should say is that Ozzy has survived the Talk of the Devil, Speak of the Devil fiasco, and is still massive.
Absolutely.
So he's like this shadow looming.
He's now
Sabbath.
bigger, in fact, than Sabbath.
He's bigger on his own than he ever was in Sabbath. Yeah.
And also because he's being managed by Sharon.
All joking aside, is a fantastic manager.
And super astute,
Yeah.
knows exactly where it's at right
Yeah.
now as opposed to where it was at 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And suddenly Ozzy's touring America with these newcomers called Motley Crue.
Yeah.
And then the following year it was Rat opening for him.
Yeah.
And then you keep moving the dial, and Metallica were the year after that, and Megadeth. And then you get right up to the point where he's got Marilyn Manson.
And Sharon starts Ozfest.
Because
he didn't get on the bill of something.
Lollapalooza.
Yeah, I'll start my own. Yeah, start my own festival.
Jane's Addiction guy.
Oh, Perry Farrell.
Who started Lollapalooza. Sharon said, how about Ozzy on Lollapalooza? And he was like, you must be fucking joking. This is for fashionable, cutting-edge kids, not boring old farts.
Yeah.
So being Sharon, she decided to prove him wrong. Let's put it that way.
And turned out to be right.
Turned out to be absolutely right.
The backdrop of Iommi's next period is that Ozzy, his former singer, is tremendously successful.
So who do they get in to steady the ship, take Sabbath to the next level? Ian Gillan.
They did.
Ian Gillan,
Yeah.
who'd last been famous in America 10 years before
Yeah.
with Deep Purple.
And I believe the story was that Gillan went to the pub with Tony Iommi, got bladdered in the usual way, and woke up in Black Sabbath, essentially.
Well, that was Gillan's story.
Yes.
And I always believed
Yes.
it, right up to the moment when I read his autobiography, which it is, I would say it is the worst autobiography I've ever read, except for the fact that Tony Iommi's is so much worse.
Yeah.
So much worse. But look, we're going to get bogged down in this if we're not careful. So, Gillan's a big mistake. But there were bigger ones to come.
But Gillan does do the classic Reading Rock with Stonehenge, which is a Black Sabbath moment that goes down in history.
Go on.
Well, they close Reading Rock Festival. They're the big headliners. It's the first real chance for the British fans to see Ian Gillan.
This is 83, 84?
Yeah, it must be about then. Around then.
Born Again was the album.
I was at this, again as a fan. And all I remember was it was freezing cold. It was one of those summer days in England that you used to get where before global warming. It was free, and Reading was by the side of the River Thames.
Oh yeah, it still is actually.
Yeah, it was, and in the morning the mist would
The
roll
misty
in.
morning.
I'm sure that's where Ronnie, he must have done a gig. So it got colder and colder through the day. By the time Sabbath came on at sort of 10 o'clock at night or 8 o'clock at night or whatever it was, I mean, it was dark by that point. It was freezing. I remember it being freezing, and they come on, and they've got this Stonehenge monument, and it's the complete opposite to Spinal Tap, the film. It's enormous. It's so big. They come on, and they've got all this dry ice, and Gillan hasn't learned the lyrics to any of the songs.
No.
I don't know why would you learn them? Who needs to learn? So he's written them all in a book that he's got down by his foot.
Because they're going to get no computer technology.
No, nothing like that. No.
This is a big, huge book.
That he's going to turn the pages off with his foot. Great.
Oh, yeah.
What could possibly go wrong?
A skilled professional
What could possibly
in his element.
So they have all the dry ice at the start of the show, and he can't turn the pages of the book. Then they make a terrible album. Or they'd already made a terrible album.
Born Again.
Born Again.
Was Born Again, just a brief aside, was Born Again a terrible album, or was it just a terrible album cover?
Well, it was terrible.
As you were saying earlier, I disagreed.
Well, I always wondered whether Born Again was any good. And so about probably a year ago, I played it, and it's terrible.
Even Zero the Hero
is the one that's stuck in my memory. And there's one called Trashed, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
How did that go?
It's really not good.
In Gillan's defence, because he's someone else I used to do the PR for before Sabbath, he was never good on the actuality of the lyrics.
Yeah.
So, and that is how he developed his vocal style. So, for instance, if you listen to Made in Japan, the live double album from 1972, which has about 5 tracks on it, because these are the days of jamming.
Yeah.
There's endless bits where, I will say Smoke on the Water for argument's sake. Gillan's like, we all went high, because he could never remember the fucking lyrics. So he developed this kind of scatting.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
And Bruce Dickinson of Iron Maiden once told me that Gillan had told him the same thing, and that Dickinson thought, this is really useful because some of Iron Maiden's lyrics are they're like fucking encyclopedia.
And Steve won't let him change them.
Not a syllable, not a comma. Mother Russia, can you imagine? So Dickinson's
Mother
like,
Russia, Dance of the Tsars.
Yeah, the Tsars came down. Oh, can you hear a dog?
Yeah. They're brought down.
Is that a dog?
It's brought down by the tremendous singing. That's what's encouraged them. So anyway, Gillan goes tits up, and they then just embark on this run that we're now going to try and go through.
Right. Now, this is where it gets tricky. So, for Gillan and the band at this point have musical differences. Nothing to do with the fact that Gillan, whose profile in America was lower than a snake's belly by the time he joined Sabbath by accident. 1 year later, the reformed Mark II lineup of Deep Purple announced.
Oh, they did, didn't they? Yeah.
And also, lest we forget, again, a Ronnie James Dio reference here, Rainbow with Ronnie James Dio were huge all over the world, especially Japan, Britain, Europe, whatever. Nothing in America. Each album sold less than the one before.
Yeah.
That's why Ronnie Dio ended up out of Rainbow, because Blackmore couldn't understand why Foreigner and Boston were having all these hits, and Long Live Rock and Roll got to number 89 in the chart, the album. So no one in Deep Purple has any profile in 1984 except David Coverdale, and he's not invited to the party. So Gillan raises his own profile, and then Deep Purple reform. I'm not saying that's how they looked at
element of
it.
cynicism about that.
Yeah, and I'm not a cynical guy, as you know. I take people as I find
All you're
them.
saying is the situation could be read that way.
Yes, were you a cynic?
Yes.
Which I'm not.
No.
Or you.
No. Oh, no.
Sometimes.
I'm stoic.
Stoic. I'm agnostic.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means. So now this is where it gets tricky, because actually, when Gillan leaves, I think Gillan leaves, whatever, and now Iommi. Am I right in thinking he decides he's going to do a solo album?
Well, hang on. I've got a memory now, and this could be entirely wrong, as they often are. And I'm sure someone will give us a correction and clarification. But Iommi then employs a male model called David Donato.
David Donato.
Yeah, who's an American.
Yeah.
He looks fabulous in leather. They do a photo shoot.
Leather trousers. Wasn't it the cover of Kerrang magazine?
Might well have been. He's all in leather. He looks great. He's a male model.
David Donut.
See, this is back in the day when there were models and there were male models. There were, for some
but
reason,
this was a male model. Did he have a beard?
Yeah, but for some reason, any bloke that was a model was a male model. You had to distinguish, didn't you?
Yeah, because if you just said he was a model,
now
that
you
would
just go,
confusing.
so have you met, Dave? He's a model. That's fine. But back in the day, back in the kind of more binary days of the 80s, this is Dave. He's a male model.
Yeah,
he's amazing. He's a male model.
You see, male model was on the way to male prostitute, wasn't it?
It was
in
a
those
way
days,
station.
It was a way station.
Yeah.
You're clearly on your way to
leather trousers on. You're a male model. Leather trousers down.
to
you're
the
a male
knees.
prostitute.
You're a male prostitute.
Yeah.
In fact, you are either on your way to be, if you're a male model,
in the morning, you're kind of halfway.
In the misty morning, who knows what you are? Hence, these
the
days you
trousers
say
are
he was a
halfway up
they.
sometimes.
But were you a male model back in the day?
Yeah.
You were either, you're only two things. You're either on your way to becoming a male prostitute, or you were a male prostitute on your way back
to
and on your ways
a
to
male model.
They say, John Houghton, he's a male model, and you'd go, okay, I get it.
Yeah,
I get it.
I know that guy.
Yeah. Now, David Donato,
So
did he actually do any
I
singing?
don't think he did any singing. I don't think they made a record.
He
I
just
think
modelled.
he did a photo. He was like the Savoy Brown guy.
Well, the Savoy Brown guy probably...
Maybe Don Arden misdials Tony Iommi at this stage. He goes, Tony, what you need to do, get Donald in the photo. No, what's his name?
Donald?
David Donato in the photos.
David Donald was his real name.
David Donald Donato in the photos. And get a proper singer on the road. So why don't you give my mate a ring, Glenn Hughes?
That's right. But had they stuck with David Donato, they would have gone back to the group that Ozzy christened Geezer Butler and the Three Italians.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Because when Bill Ward finally, shall we say, exits light, enters night,
exits stage left,
exits front of stage flat on his face. They got Vinny Appice in.
Yeah.
And Ozzy used to joke about Geezer Butler. Have you seen Geezer Butler and the Three Italians? They're great. But then, of course, Ian Gillan comes in. No Italian connection, sadly. One of his other failings.
Have you seen Geezer and the Two Italians and Ian Gillan?
Oh, don't forget. Actually, I know we're talking about singers, but Bev Bevan was in.
Oh, yeah.
So did you know, and this is a fact. This
Bev
is what we
Bevan
call
at Reading, I think, didn't he?
This is a fact. Okay. You listening?
Yeah.
This is a fact.
Yeah.
That when Gillan was in the group with Bev Bevan on drums, they would encore with Smoke on the Water.
They did that at Reading. They encored with Smoke on the Water.
And then Paranoid.
Yeah.
But did you know that they actually rehearsed Mr. Blue Sky as well?
Wow, that would have been amazing if they'd done that.
Wouldn't
Especially
it?
if Gillan had started going on the vocoder or whatever it was.
Well, you wouldn't have even need to know the words.
No,
would
you
you?
just go. That's the
Mr.
whole point.
Blue Sky.
As the fan streams towards the exit. But there was going to say end up with the Stonehenge thing. They ended up not fitting on any of the stages, didn't it? It was the inverse of the Spinal Tap joke.
I ghosted Don Arden's memoir, and he was forthright in his opinions.
Of the and they chucked it in the docks.
He said, he goes, that cost me $1 million. They ended up in a fucking river.
Yeah. So anyway, let's not go back to Get But.
No.
So
David Donato.
the male model.
Who, can we just say, for legal reasons,
stage left.
for legal reasons, was never a male prostitute, as John suggested, but in fact a male model.
He was a male model of the highest caliber. Well, I don't know. Maybe he was. I don't know.
No, I know. But I just sad he didn't get to sing with them.
Yeah, but he didn't.
The second out of 5 singers they've had at this point who
Who
didn't
never
get
did,
to
yeah.
sing. So then they replace him with...
Well, now this is the story, isn't it? Because Iommi at this stage says he's going to make a solo album.
Yes, it was to be a solo
Well,
album.
that's what he says. This is the story, isn't it? I'm making a solo album. I'm going to ask some of my chums to sing on it. And the chum I'm going to ask is another former
Deep
Deep
Purple.
Purple inmate, call him what you will, Glenn Hughes.
And
who's
another
never been
Midlander
known-
as well.
Who's never been known to just turn up on other people's albums, but he's going to turn up on mine.
Glenn will sing for cash.
Yeah. But the important thing to say is Glenn can sing for cash.
Ah, now we're talking.
You know, he can really, really sing.
He really can.
Yeah.
I mean, it is like a supernatural gift. I mean, no matter how badly Glenn tried to destroy himself and his voice, and he tried pretty good, the voice remains.
Yeah.
Always remains.
Yeah, amazing singer. So this is a great combination. Iommi and Glenn Hughes make a record that's allegedly going to be
Tony Iommi.
Tony Iommi's 7th star or something.
That's it. That's it. 7th. But then what I heard was that Don, who was still managing Tony, was told by the record company and promoters that basically, yeah, we can put out a Tony Iommi solo album on a modest budget, half the usual, quarter of the usual advance, and a bit of marketing, stick it out, see what happens. Or if you were to call it Black Sabbath, you can add some zeros to everything we just said.
Yeah.
And the promoters were like, yeah, we can do you could do some clubs and theatres, or you could be Black Sabbath and do the LA Forum and Madison Square Garden.
Up to
Have
you.
a think
Up
about
to
it.
you, yeah.
Tony, have a think.
Yeah.
There's this huge sack of cash here, or there's one of those little,
Yeah.
in Robin Hood days,
Right, yeah,
little
I'm-
thing full of gold coins.
Oh, yeah, I know what you mean. They used to keep on their belt.
A purse.
Yeah, purse, yeah.
Here's your purse, my man, or here's your Santa Claus sack.
Yeah.
And he chose, as a man of integrity, he chose...
He chose the Santa Claus. But when I read Tony Iommi's autobiography, which, as we've said, is one of the worst books ever published.
Must have taken about an hour to
Yeah.
read.
Iommi comes across, I mean, I'm sure this is his ghostwriter rather than Iommi. He comes across as so glib as to be almost vacuous, and that he would, so I made this great record with, solo record with Glenn Hughes, but then someone rang me and told me it had to be Black Sabbath, so it was Black Sabbath. That's how it's dealt with, essentially.
But then Tony, just a brief aside, we don't do many of these, but Tony Iommi's ghostwriter, I don't know if he was Norwegian or something, but English is his second language. So you've got this guy from the Netherlands or somewhere like that, Scandinavia, who's just this big Sabbath fan, has never written any books in his life, or since, I don't think.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. And he somehow becomes Tony's ghostwriter.
Because there are all these bits about, like...
He doesn't speak English, this guy.
Tony Iommi
Except
would
as
go,
a second language.
Well, I met this woman. She was a lovely woman. We got married, and then 50 pages later, you hear, well, anyway, Cheryl and me was over. I met this lovely woman, and I got. And it's just this. It's an indescribably bad but compelling book.
Whole chunks are like a page and a half. It's full of chapters that are like 2 pages long.
Yeah. But they're containing about 10 years worth of stuff.
Yeah, and tell you nothing. Absolutely nothing. In a language that isn't your spoken tongue.
Yeah.
So.
And also, the other thing to say is if you have ever interviewed Tony Iommi, I know obviously you've interviewed him lots and lots of times. I think I ever interviewed him about twice. But, he keeps it short, Tony. Doesn't he? Keeps it short.
When I did their PR, in 1980 on the Heaven and Hell tour. We went all over Europe, Britain. They were the first band to take me to America. And when I got back, I quit to become a dishwasher in a burger restaurant because that was more fun than doing PR for Sabbath at that point.
Yeah.
And I used to joke and say, Tony Iommi only ever said 2 words to me in the whole time I worked with him. And they were fuck off.
Yeah.
Which is only a slight exaggeration.
Yeah, yeah.
He just didn't speak.
Yeah. Which the one time that worked to their advantage, and I found this out when I interviewed him the first time, which was in Birmingham. They were rehearsing. It was probably about the time of the guy we're going to talk about next, their next singer after Glenn Hughes. They're rehearsing, got this huge warehouse, where they're doing the rehearsals or whatever. They interviewed Tony Iommi. And so I had to, I can't remember what Jeff Barton probably said, find out about this, asking about the devil worship or whatever. Maybe it was the time David Dickinson had done
He was
something
saying,
or other.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Oh, we never talk about that." And it was a brilliant line because it just implied
a
that,
lot.
that it's so terrible. But in actual fact, it was just all bollocks, But we never. I can't talk about
No,
that.
I've taken the sacred
Yeah.
vow of Valhalla.
Which I always remember, and it was very funny.
So, Glenn Hughes goes on tour, and
Did they go on tour? I mean, the album was great, but it didn't really take off. Is that fair to
It
say?
didn't really sound like a Sabbath album.
No.
I mean, okay, it's got Iommi.
Yeah.
It's got a fantastic vocalist. But there were
But it
more
was
sort of
very
ballads
much,
and
it very much
atmospheric.
was a solo record. He didn't write
Yeah.
it as a Sabbath in his Sabbath
It was kind of the
mindset.
Chinese democracy of its
Yeah.
day, except
Yeah.
done way quicker and cost far less, and didn't get noticed.
See, that's
at
the
all.
amazing thing about Iommi is his sheer fecundity. I mean, he just was prolific, astonishingly prolific.
If he had put that out as a solo album, it would have got great critical acclaim and not really sold any less copies than
yeah,
it did.
yeah,
And then if he'd come back with a Sabbath album,
yeah.
if his head had been
Actually,
on right,
that would have been the way to go. It would have been very good. Yeah.
But at this point, they start to tour, and a guy called Doug Goldstein comes into the picture because Glenn was so out of control that they hired this guy.
It's like that bit in Pulp Fiction when they call Harvey Keitel. In the music business, you called Doug Goldstein.
You did, the Wolf.
Yeah, yeah.
And Doug told me this. He said that he met Glenn wherever they were playing in America. He drove to the hotel. He said as he got to the hotel, there's a big crowd outside. Like, something's going on. What's happened? Has there been a shooting, an accident?
Shooting.
Yeah, well, you don't know, do you? And he pushes his way through the crowd, and lying stark naked on the ground is Glenn Hughes, who's been up for about 5 years without sleep, every drug known to humanity. He's completely naked, lying flat on his back in the street outside the hotel. And Doug told me, he went up and he said, "Mr. Hughes." And apparently Glenn looked at him and said, "Yes, what can I do for you?" And he said, "Well, Mr. Hughes, I'm here to tell you I'm your new personal assistant." And apparently Glenn said, "Oh, thank you. Could you hold up? Could you
Give me a hand
And
up.
Doug's like, "No, fuck you. You got yourself here. You get yourself out and went in and checked in."
Good old Doug. Yeah, he was the
Listen,
man.
Doug was the man. Doug was
was
the
the
guy
man.
that used to carry, because Doug then a few years later went to work for Guns N' Roses. He was the guy that used to carry Slash into hotels on his shoulder.
Yeah.
He said as Slash would be pissing himself.
Oh, I remember Alan Niven saying
The original
the
manager,
original
of
manager
Guns.
of Guns N' Roses who worked with her, was whenever it got like really terrible, his ultimate backup plan was he would get Doug Goldstein to take whichever errant member of Guns N' Roses it was to Hawaii.
Yeah.
They just put them on a plane to Hawaii because it's contained. You can contain it.
Yeah.
That's what you have to do. They can't go anywhere once they're there.
We're kind of siding here because there's so many funny stories we can tell about Doug Goldstein's years with Guns N' Roses.
Oh God, that should be
Doug,
a whole
by the
other-
way, if you're listening, I know you still hate me. Still don't really know why, but I love you.
Oh, stop it.
Now listen, we're using up a lot of time here, and we've only mentioned one band with new
Well, I thought
singers.
we were gonna
we had
do-
about 20.
I think we should do this in 2 parts.
Yeah. Oh, no, about fucking 10 parts the way we're going. But so let's skip through the next bit. So who follows Glenn Hughes?
So then they get the man really has a cult following amongst Sabbath fans, I think, which is Tony the Cat Martin.
Okay, before
Or
we
do they get someone in between?
Before we get to the cat,
is there someone else?
I don't know. So it gets messy. I think the cat.
I think the cat's the next
The
one.
cat.
The cat. And I mean, he's called the cat. You know what?
Because he's slinky.
Yeah, he's slinky. But he's sort of a version of several of the singers they've had before.
He's a little bit Glenn.
Yeah.
A little bit Dio.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about the Ozzy.
No, he's not the Ozzy.
Apart from being a Midlander.
But he's a little bit kind of David Donato as well, in that he looks good in the leather. You know, he looks kind of cool.
Like a male model.
Yeah, maybe. But he wore the cross, and he had the cross on.
And didn't he used to wear a hat?
The cross on. He had a cross around his neck.
He'd previously been in a French tribute band to the Sabbath, and he would wear a croissant. A croissant. What?
He used to work in Greg's, and they found him.
He did not. Did he?
I don't know.
Did you want a fucking sausage roll? Are you paranoid? Or did you want a pasty?
Yeah.
I don't know where that accent's got. It's not the Midlands, is it?
I don't know. I don't know where the cat's from. I've got a feeling.
He's from the Midlands.
Is he? Okay, good.
I think, yeah.
I think in my head he is, but I don't know that's right.
I tell you what. Great singer.
Yeah, no, really good singer. And they do the Headless Cross album, don't they?
The Headless Croissant, as it was known in France.
Ironic, considering, the cat's got a non-headless cross around his neck. But
hang on. What's a non-headless cross?
Well, I don't know what a headless cross is. It doesn't make sense. It wouldn't be a cross. It doesn't actually make sense.
If I was a computer right now, there'd be smoke,
steam coming out
because
smoke on the water.
My processors are struggling with this. Yeah. We don't know what a headless cross is.
No one knows what a headless. It's one of those things, isn't it? It's like
but it sounds great.
You mentioned use your illusion. It's meaningless. It's just 3 words put together, but they sound quite good. Headless cross. It's like that thing where they go on Twitter and say, make up your porn name by using your last pet plus your mother's maiden name or something. The last times the last film. It's like that.
I've never seen that.
Name your
what Twitter accounts do you follow?
Name your heavy metal album. In this pile, there's a load of words like headless, death, car, I don't know, devil.
Democracy.
In this pile, there's a load of words like cross, grave, Satan, storm, and you just pick one out.
Evil / live, or you could reverse it.
Yeah,
you could flip it.
You could, depending how your head lies.
It could be like a mirror image.
Have you worked out whether live is evil spelled backwards yet? He still hasn't. He still can't do it. So you pick one from this pile and one from that pile.
Yes.
And headless cross comes out. Yeah. Headless cross, but it doesn't mean anything.
No. Well, no, it means something to me.
It does, because the cat then...
The cat interprets
this is what great singers do. They go, and find the headless cross. And you think, yeah, I could find a headless cross.
Yeah.
I could do that.
What were some of his other big ones?
I don't know. The people love that album. I quite often go, if I'm on social media or something, I'll stumble across one of our old chums, heavy metal chums, Dave Ling and so on. Tim McMillan, who we mentioned last time, and all those guys who are very funny. And they they also know a hell of a lot more about heavy metal than I do.
Do they?
They do.
Do they?
They do.
Do they?
And they will say, oh no, hang on, if this album is beloved of the fans. And I think it is. I think it's one of those Sabbath albums that's in the underrated pile.
Yes. There was another guy, and I forget who told me this. I think it was an old Sabbath tour manager. And he said they're in this is because Geezer left to join Ozzy's band. He came back. There's all this kind of stuff going on. Vinny Appice left to be in Dio's band, hence Bevan, later Cozy Powell. At one point, Sabbath had Neil Murray on bass.
Well, they were like Whitesnake. I mean, they were sort of interchangeable.
Well, they were full of ex-Whitesnake members,
Yeah,
weren't they? Neil Murray,
Whitesnake were full of everyone.
Deep Purple and Rainbow. And, there was Neil Murray on bass, Cozy Powell on drums, Don Airey on keyboards.
Yeah. Well, they had that guy Jeff Nichols as well, didn't they? Do you remember him?
I really do remember
Mick
him.
Raises his eyes.
So fucking useless.
But how good do you have to be to play keyboards for Black Sabbath?
I tell you what, better than him. On tour, I was played because they would record it every night from the mixing desk, and we would be laughing, me and the roadies, listening to Jeff Nichols' parts.
Oh,
because it's on the desk, so you can literally hear every instrument.
I don't blame him, because he used to have to stand at the side of the stage.
Well, he was in the wings to begin
that's right,
with.
in the wings. Yeah, that's what I mean. And Sabbath were deafening at the time. I mean, you couldn't hear any. It was like...
But the thing is, how much keyboards do you need?
I don't know.
So
I don't know why they had a keyboard player.
They're doing Paranoid, right? Dun, 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 dun. On the keyboard, you could hear... Dinky, 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 ding, ding, ding,
I mean, he's just having a laugh.
Yeah. Or Sabbath play. Dinky, dinky, ding, dinky, dinky, ding.
Yeah, but what were you supposed to play? What else could he play?
Jeff also had his head so far up Iomi's arse. Iomi actually had two heads on stage. We used to sit in the lobby and we go wait for Tony to come down, because he's always the last to come down.
Yeah.
And he'd be in the lift with him would be Jeff Nichols, and whatever Tony was wearing, Jeff would be wearing.
Yeah.
The only difference was Jeff always wore either a Black Sabbath T-shirt or a Black Sabbath tour jacket.
So people.
I'm in Black Sabbath too. Don't forget me.
Kept his pass around his neck.
He did. He really did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I understand. I mean, I think it's worth saying that. You're saying everyone waited for Iomi. People always, because of Ozzy's fame, sort of see Sabbath as Ozzy's band. But
no, it's definitely Tony's.
Tony is
always
the absolute alpha male in Black Sabbath.
And what was his nickname in Black Sabbath when I worked for them?
I don't know. I didn't.
Darth Vader.
Oh,
and he fucking was.
Yeah.
Somewhere between Darth Vader and Darth Vader.
Yeah. Somewhere on that spectrum. And
I was told that before or after the Cat, around that period, the Cat period, there was a guy in America sent in a cassette, and it was amazing. And they went, "Fucking, I've got to get this guy here." So Iomi and Geezer call this guy. And they're like, "Listen, we love the tape." And he's like, "Oh, wow, man." Another American guy, "Thanks. When can you get to LA, to do the audition?" He's like, "Tomorrow." They're like, "Right." They send him first class tickets. He flies in, put him up at the Sunset Marquee in LA, get to the audition. "Oh, it's good to see you, man. Fucking love that stuff." And he starts to sing, and he's like the worst singer you've ever heard. And they're looking at each other going, "What the fuck's going on? What is it? Maybe he's got a bad throat or something." And after a couple of numbers, they're like, "Oh, all right, mate. We're a little puzzled here." And they said, "You don't really sound anything like you did on the tape." And he's like, "Which side of the tape did you play?" It turned out they'd played the wrong side of the cassette.
They played the side that had Heaven and Hell on. I just recorded that for the car.
Yeah. But it was one of those. And then on the other side where he was singing, it was like,
terrible.
Sake.
Amazing.
So that was another marvellous development.
Because we know that later on Dio comes back in and they get back with Ozzy and all of that. Maybe we should conclude the Sabbath element of this.
Yeah.
With the singer that never was, but some people still think was. You know who I'm going to say now? Tom Jones.
Oh, of course. Sorry, I did think of that earlier, and then I got so excited about the Cat years.
Yeah, the Cat. Yeah, about Headless Cross.
Yeah. Oh, fuck yeah. Catless. Oh no, because the Cat was there.
Yeah, it can't be Catless.
So April the 1st, 1987.
Well, because I started Kerrang in 87.
Oh,
so
yes.
It's been 88.
Kerrang was a weekly, but I think this particular week, the actual date on the cover was April the 1st.
Yeah.
And so one of the young whippersnappers in the office, who shall remain nameless, Jon.
Yeah. Well, no. You have to give credit where it's due. Jeff Barton came up with the idea.
Did he?
Yeah, he did. And he came up to me and said, April the first cover day. Yeah, let's do an April Fool, and let's say Tom Jones has joined Black Sabbath.
And you wrote the story, didn't
and I
you?
wrote the story, but the thing was, it was to kind of set. I mean, now I suppose people think about Tom Jones when he's on The Voice. And all this.
Yeah.
Back in the day, this is 87, 88. It was before he'd come back and had the hits with Kiss. You know, when he came back and did Sex Bomb and Kiss, and so he was still kind of Vegas Tom at that point.
Right.
Still famous, but not. And the fact Sabbath had so many singers, and the fact Tom Jones was Welsh, it just had the faintest glimmer of plausibility.
Because by this point, Sabbath's situation with singers was
so
so
dark.
ludicrous.
Yeah, they'd had so many people, and Gillan had gone completely wrong, and they say
David
Donato had
Donato
gone completely wrong, the Cat, and it had just all gone tits up, whatever. And
I don't think the Cat was in
maybe
it.
not even happened yet, but so I went home that night, and I remember doing it. I remember sitting at home going, what am I going to write? And I just came up with this ridiculous idea that they would have because I was trying to think of something that would have to do with Wales. So I thought of mining, as you did back in the day, because that was all that Wales was ever famous
Still is,
for.
let's be fair.
And I thought mining, the Minotaur, the mythical beast. So we came up with this idea that they'd made an album called The Minotaur. Because it kind of sounded Sabbathy, the Minotaur.
Absolutely.
And that Tom and...
Cometh the Minotaur.
It was sort of based a bit on the fact Gillan had got pissed and joined the band. So it was like Tony, I got drinking with Tom, and we ended up rehearsing, and it was so good. And the idea was, and credit also to Crusher Jewel, who came up with this fake stage design for it. Because they had this idea that they'd come on stage, it would be dark, it would be like a mine, and then they'd come on with those helmets on that had the light
torch on the helmet.
with the torch on the helmet.
There'd be all these roadies in the gantry with these helmets on.
Black, and then the first thing you'd see is the helmets coming out from backstage. And then Tom would come out, and he said, "We do all this," and then the encores are paranoid, and it's not unusual.
It was a three-liner.
Something like
I'm
that,
still laughing about it all these years later. You said, and for encores, they would be doing Iron Man, Paranoid, and It's Not Unusual.
Which again was based on the fact they'd done Smoke on the Water.
And Mr. Blue Sky.
Almost Mr. Blue Sky. So we do this ludicrous story, and I remember
it made the newspapers, didn't it?
It was before I would become particularly seasoned as a writer or anything. I used to be incredibly precious about every single word, And Jeff did this quite clever thing where he got the copy, and we used to do things called drop caps, which were where you'd make a break in the text, and you start a new paragraph, and it would have a big letter at the start of the first word, and that was called a drop cap. And he made the drop caps spell out JOKE. But obviously I hadn't written it with that in mind, so he had to insert these words into the text. And the first word he put, instead of putting something, so he put Jeepers. That was the first word of the story. Jeepers. Tom Jones has joined Black Sabbath, and I'd put something like, I can hardly believe I'm writing these words. I was trying to do it all But anyway, so I remember that. And then the story came out, and it just...
People believed it.
Well, the funny thing was I always remember Ozzy saying he had read it.
Yeah.
And
he fell off his chair laughing.
Yeah.
He literally fell off. Brilliantly, he was sitting by the pool at the Sunset Marquee. And apparently he couldn't catch his breath. He was laughing so hard. So I think it was our mutual photographer friend.
Oh, I told him.
Have a look at that.
Yeah. But the weird thing is now you get into the sort of the dark depths of the internet, and you still sometimes see it repeated. Like, did it happen or was it a joke? It's got to that point where, obviously it was a very long time ago, and it's that thing of people kind of remember it, and they sort of, well, was it real or was it,
Well, I stole that idea for Classic Rock magazine. So if that was 88, this must have been 2001, and April. It's an issue with April the 1st written on the cover, and 2001 was just before Velvet Revolver. We didn't know Velvet Revolver was coming, but everybody knew Axl was mental. And they'd known that a long time at this point. And we did a big story in the news pages. So we did it in the news because Classic Rock magazine, Kerrang was a weekly, Classic Rock the monthly, so quite a lot, big, chunky news section. And we did it as the lead, exciting, here's the main news. And it was that Robbie Williams had joined Guns N' Roses to replace Axl.
Yeah.
And because Slash was born in Stoke-on-Trent.
Oh, yeah. So was Robbie. Yeah, yeah.
We had this whole story about how the two of them had met at a Port Vale football match because they're both Port Vale fans. And we did the same thing. The encores would be, welcomed. What would the encores be for Guns?
Sweet Child of Mine.
Sweet Child of Mine, Paradise City, and Angels.
Yeah. That would be quite good. I would watch that. I would watch that. Yeah.
Well, back then, Robbie was
he could sell it. Well, he'd done the video where he dressed up as Kiss, didn't he? There was one of his
and
videos.
Also, there was talk of him replacing Freddie in Queen.
Yeah.
It was kind of out there somewhere. So we did this, tee-hee. We were on BBC News, newspapers, people ringing us from all over the world. Yeah. And we'd even done one of those pictures where we'd taken Robbie's face and stuck it on a picture of Axl.
Yeah.
And we made it deliberately really shit. So you can tell it was hand cut and glued on. And people still bought it.
Yeah.
Because Guns N' Roses was so intensely dysfunctional.
Yeah, it could have happened. And I think Sabbath were at that same time.
All right, now listen, John. We're going to end there. I thought we were going to mention about 20 bands.
Well, we're going to mention them in the next one.
We're going to mention them in the next one. So whatever you're doing for the next 2 weeks...
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned!
Don't touch that dial.
And remember...
Oh, I don't know.
I was leaving that for you.
Remember to
come back. Remember to come back.
Remember to come back.
Yeah, goodbye.
If you liked this episode, be sure to leave us a review, share it with a friend, or plain old subscribe wherever you happen to listen to it. For full episode show notes, visit nofilter.media/Getcha Rocks Off.
This has been a No Filter Media production.
Say what you want.